Hi, and welcome to Behind the Headlines of History, a podcast that explores intriguing stories from the past, brought to you by Ancestry and newspapers.com. I'm Brad Argent from Ancestry, and I love stories, and I love history.
And I'm Brad's co-host, Dr. Michala Hulme, historian and genealogist.
Each episode, we explore an intriguing, eye-opening, captivating story from the newspapers from the past, with each other and with you. And it might even be a little bit spooky.
Then we put our genealogy hats on, search through other records and shake those family trees to find out more about some of the key people involved in the event and what happened to them. Finally, we round off each episode with our extra, read all about it stories. These are often fun, shorter reports from the papers that piqued our attention. Perhaps because they're weird and wonderful, or simply because they just made us laugh.
So join us as we go behind the headlines of history.
So Brad, for those that don't know, for those that have never seen us before, how did we meet? Do you remember?
We met because we had a shared passion for history. And, I was working for Ancestry. You were an active genealogist in the media. You started working on a TV show called DNA Journey. And one of the things that, is quite frustrating for me was we'd often appear in the same program, but rarely see each other because we're rarely in the same scene. And then, a while ago now, a few years ago now, we started this podcast because we both have this kind of passion for history and a passion for storytelling. And what I really enjoy about this relationship is we come at history from very, very different angles.
You do.
You're quite academic in the way in which you approach history, which is not surprising because that's where your PhD is. I'm a little more chaotic about how I go about things. I look for a story and then I kind of lean into the research and stuff. How do I back up that story? How do I know this story is truthful is quite a powerful word, but how do I know there's veracity, if you like?
And can we just say, the reason that I'm here more than anything is because I love newspapers. It has given me over the years some of my best stories. Look, everyone likes a census, everyone likes a birth, marriage or a death. No, folks, if you are not putting your ancestors in the newspaper, if you are not searching their address in the newspaper, you are missing out because all the juicy bits, all the bits you want to know is in the newspaper.
Absolutely. So why are we wearing pointy hats?
This is our usual attire, folks, when we're not on the telly.
You look like you've just come from a meeting.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
And I feel like my hat should say dunce on it.
I'm saying nothing. Okay, so the reason that I'm dressed like a witch is because this week is our Halloween special, which means all the stories have some sort of spooky, ghosty kind of feel to them.
I'm already scared.
So you should be sitting next to me with a witch's hat on.
So have you got something spooky to share with me?
Oh, have I got something spooky to share with you? Arguably, by the way, folks, if you're going to be tuning in over the next few weeks to me and Brad, you know we have a little competition as to who can find the best story, who can keep you entertained. 9 times out of 10, that is me.
Yeah.
But every now and again, he'll have a story that, might just top mine.
I let her win. She needs the confidence boost.
He's so cheeky. Okay, so my Halloween story then. It's quite a modern article, actually. So this article is from the Lancashire Telegraph, which is, for those that don't know, Lancashire is a part of England. It's in sort of the northwest region of England. And it's from Thursday, the 25th of September, 1969, and it's on page 8. We will put links, by the way, in the description to all the newspaper articles that we are going to talk about in case you're interested in having a look yourself.
Okay, so this is like moon landing was in 69.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He remembers. I wasn't born. Let me read you just a little bit of this article. So it's called The Strange Case of Alice Nutter. While witches on the continent and in Scotland were burned at the stake for their crimes, England followed the more civilised practice of hanging witches convicted of murder by witchcraft from the gallows.
Oh, far more civilised.
More civilised. We're not going to burn you, we're just going to hang you from the gallows. That's nice of us. Among the Pendle witches who were hanged at Lancaster Castle, Alice Nutter, a woman of some quality, was an enigma. She was a wealthy mistress of a large and prosperous estate and lived in the affluent area of Roughly Hall. Now, I'm going to pick up on this story, but in order to understand Alice's story, we have to go back a bit. So we're going to start in March of 1612. So there was a young girl, she was called Alison Devise, and she was walking on a roadside in Lancashire, and she comes across a man called John Law, and John Law is a peddler. And she asked the peddler if he would basically give her a pin, right?
Okay, so a peddler is just a person who sells trinkets and bits and bobs on the street, yeah?
You've got it. He refuses to give her the pin, and she mutters something under her breath. Yeah, like... Next minute, he collapses on the floor, and she thinks that what she muttered has caused him to collapse on the floor. Look, it was probably a stroke, but in 1612 they didn't know what a stroke was. Anyway, he's collapsed on the floor. His son is slightly alarmed at the state of his dad and goes to the local magistrate. They go and speak to Alison, who confesses to basically putting a spell on him. She says, I've put a spell on him, and that's why he's collapsed. But not only did she admit to putting a spell on him, she also, by the way, implicated her neighbours who they didn't like. And I'm sure we've all had neighbours that we have not liked, but many of us wouldn't accuse them of being witches, but she did.
Back then, witchiness wasn't some kind of Stevie Nicks affectation. She's putting her hand up for a pretty serious offence.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was death, basically. She was basically condemning the neighbours to, if somebody's found guilty of being a witch, that's it. You're hung.
Why would she do that?
Because she didn't like them. She didn't get on with the neighbours.
But she essentially said she cast a spell.
Yeah. Anyway, the magistrate rounds everybody up, including other members of Alison's family. They get rounded up as well. And they're all accused of being witches. So the trial takes place. The magistrate, who is, fairly confident that he's going to get a conviction. And the reason he's fairly confident is because his star witness is 9-year-old Jeanette Device, who is Alison's youngest sister. She's only 9. She comes in. Her mother, who's been tried as a witch, also sees her come in. Is mortified. She screams when she sees her 9-year-old daughter enter the courtroom. And yeah, can you imagine?
I've got this picture of like a 17th century Jerry Springer type thing happening.
So Janet's mum, Elizabeth, has gone mad. She's seen her daughter come in, she's gone mad. So they've thrown her out of court and said she can't stay in. Jeanette has got up on the table and she has pointed at every single member of her family, her sister Alison, her brother James, her grandmother, and her mother, and condemned them all as witches.
Okay. So far this is about Alison.
Yeah, so far this is about Alison, and Alison's younger sister, Jeanette, condemns them all as witches.
There already sounds like there's plenty of nutters in this story, but where is Alice
Okay.
Nutter?
So Alice Nutter was also condemned by Jeanette as a witch, but she didn't fit the mould. So Jeanette's family were all poor. They were beggars. They kind of fitted that mold of, they do witchcraft. Nutter didn't. She was like pretty wealthy. She was a landowner. The only thing is she was a Roman Catholic. So there's a bit of like,
okay.
Was she condemned because, she wasn't actually a witch, but it suited the crown to condemn her because she was a Roman Catholic. But out of all of them, she really didn't fit the bill of being a witch. But Jeanette had come on and condemned them all, and they were hung. So they were all hung, including her brother, her mother, her grandmother, her sister Alison, all hung. Now, I know from your face, Brad, you're thinking, so what happened to 9-year-old Jeanette Devise?
Yeah, I mean, she's just wiped out her family.
She's literally wiped out her family. So 20-odd years later, the sort of legal precedent that she set for a child, giving evidence in a courtroom, would come back and would bite her so hard. Because a 10-year-old boy actually accuses her of witchcraft. Yes, accuses her of witchcraft. Now, by this point, we've got a new monarch on the throne, and he's a bit more sceptical about witchcraft. He wants evidence, and there isn't any evidence. The boy admits that he's made it all up. So she isn't hung for it, but because she's spent time in Lancaster Castle waiting for trial, they want money off her for board, which she hasn't got. She hasn't got. I know.
So, hang on, so she has to pay for her own imprisonment?
Absolutely, yeah.
What happens? Oh, she hasn't got the money, so what happens?
So, not quite sure. I've been doing, a bit of research into it. The last record we've got for her is 1636, where she's listed as still being inside Lancaster Castle. The likelihood is she dies inside Lancaster Castle.
So she could still be there.
She literally could still be there now. But what's really important about this case, more than anything else really, is that the fact that a 9-year-old, because normally it was 14 to give evidence, that a 9-year-old gave evidence, right? And that they thought that was credible. And that would have implications because they actually wrote in law, well, it was like a guide to magistrates on how to prosecute sort of witches. And they used this as like a case study of what to do. And then years later, you have the Salem witch trial. So this was kind of the precedent, the legal precedent to that case that would happen later on.
Wow, so she kind of toasted herself.
Yeah.
Was there any evidence? Like, what evidence would they have needed?
Yeah, so there was some evidence that on Good Friday, Alice Nutter and other members of Jeanette's and Alison's family that had been dragged into this were basically seen sort of worshipping on Good Friday, which they weren't supposed to be. They should have been in church and they were somewhere else. So that was kind of the evidence that they were seeing.
Sounds to me like there is religious undertones to all of this stuff that's going on.
Yeah, I think there was. King James I, that was on the throne at the time, he was actually really into witchcraft and believed in it. He wrote a book on it. So James I wrote that children, women and liars can be witnesses over high treason to God. So that was what he said. So he was really keen that if anyone was suspected, of being a witch, even if they were a child could give evidence, because as I say, normally it was 14. A child could give evidence and basically declare mostly women witches.
So it was just a good way of getting rid of somebody with essentially no evidence.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alison possibly felt terrible, bad, that she had, put what she believed to be a spell on John Law and he'd collapsed. Possibly, looking at it through modern eyes, could that have been a stroke? We don't know. Anyway, how good was that for a ghosty, witchy?
That's just the thing. Every time I sit down and talk to you, I learn something. If only I could retain it.
Okay.
But at least I'm learning something, which is good.
Yeah.
I did not know that whole thing about children testifying. I think that's fascinating. What I always find interesting about witchcraft stories is, particularly where they're convicted, is like no one ever used their witchcraft to escape.
I think I'd have made a good witch.
I think you do.
Thank you. Anyway, have you got a story?
I
for
do
us?
indeed have a story. So I just want to read you the intro to this story because it's very, very spooky. Hands reached out of the night to clutch at throats. Something in the shadows sent a child hysterical with fear. A white apparition stared in through the window.
You've got me hooked. I need to know.
It's
more.
kind of terrifying. The journalist David Burke did a brilliant job of really taking me right to that place, that moment in time. And, it's a shame there's not more stories like this written. So my story, this comes from the Sydney Morning Herald, which is from Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. And it was printed on Sunday, the 24th of February, 1957. And I think, is this Australia's most haunted house? Or, perhaps more correctly, was it? Now, I look, it's a big line to throw out, but let's see. Now, the headline is Ghosts Upstairs and Down. And ghosts is written in a spooky kind of ghosty way. Oh, yeah, no, it's very evocative. Now, the story is from 1957, but really it goes right back to the origins of colonial Australia. So we're talking 1826. We have a guy called John Campbell coming out to Australia. I think that came out around 1821. Him and his wife and 13 children. 13 children.
Wow.
Now, could you imagine doing a voyage with that many children? Back then, the voyages were taking, 6 months?
Well, it was amazing, wasn't it, if you actually survived the voyage over there, especially with young kids and stuff.
Yeah, no. And they were coming to a colony that at this point, most of the white settlers there were convicts.
Right.
He'd been described as by some as a major, by some as a colonel. So he's obviously had some military connection. But he decides he wants to build this house out in what is now called Eastern Creek. Now, that's sort of out west of Sydney. These days, it's just part of the urban sprawl of Sydney, but back then it was bush. So he gets this place, and it's called Bangaribi. Now, that's in the local language of the indigenous people.
Right, okay.
And he decides he wants to build this house there. It's an interesting area. It has some history. The local indigenous people talk about a battle that was fought between two indigenous tribes over a woman.
As always. Yeah.
And many indigenous people lost their lives here. So there was already some, if you like, trauma in the land, shall we say. But they weren't perturbed by that. They started to build the house. But John and his wife never moved in because they died before the house was finished.
Oh, no.
And now I have a picture of the house I want to show you because the picture's really interesting. This is the house.
Wow, that's a nice house, isn't it?
It is a nice house. It is a nice house. And one of the things you notice about it is it's got this kind of rotunda, almost like a tower thing that allows them to look over the grounds.
Yeah.
But he never got to see that. So it was taken over by somebody else. And their goal was to build out the property, flatten the area, turn it into an area where they could breed horses. And they did. They very successfully bred racehorses there. And For probably 1 or 2 decades, it was the place to breed horses. So everything seems to be going okay on the surface. But there's some deaths there. Now, a convict was murdered, because you've got to remember, these places are all staffed by convicts.
Okay.
Right? They would, the owners would have applied to the government to get convict servants, essentially, indentured or slaved labour, to build out and to maintain the horses and everything. But there was some kind of trouble and a convict was murdered. One of the other servants that was there was actually a soldier, committed suicide in one of the rooms.
Wow.
And there was a blood stain that they couldn't get rid of. And so this place sat there for a long time, empty. Now, the reason this article is popping up in 1957 is because a few weeks after this article, the house was destroyed. So this is the reason to tell that story. This house no longer exists.
Why was it destroyed?
The march of progress.
Right, okay.
Weirdly, it was destroyed because they were building telecommunications towers there.
Wow. Right, okay.
So, technology was erasing this piece of history. Someone needed to look after the property. And I want to read you a clip from the article that talks about one particular person's experience there. It's a young lad who was caretaking, if you like. One of the earliest stories concerning the spare bedroom, a youth, and this is the bedroom with the stain in it, a youth of 17, sturdy, healthy, level-headed, came to look after Bangaribi while his family, the owners, were away. Next morning, he was miles away, shaking with fear. That night, the story goes, the boy moved into the spare bedroom, the room with the stain in it. He woke up in the night to feel cold hands gripping his throat. He struggled for his life against the gripping fingers, broke free, scooped up his clothes, and rushed out of the house. He dressed in a paddock away from the house and walked miles for help before he could calm down. Now, this is one of many, many stories that are shared about this particular place. There's talk of screeching noises and scratching noises coming from all areas within the house. It feels as though this place was somehow cursed, perhaps by a mix of, the colonial people that had come to settle it, the indigenous people that had, died before them. I was doing a little bit of digging, and I found on Ancestry a descendant of the Campbell family who originally came out to Australia to build it. And the story that they tell is a little bit different.
Okay.
Apparently that house, the roof, particularly the roof on that round sort of large tower bit, was poorly constructed. But constructed in such a way that possums, which is part of the local wildlife, could get in, as they do, but not get out.
Wow, so they're stuck in the roof.
They are stuck in the roof. Now, anybody out there who's listening who's encountered a possum in the wild will tell you they are terrifying. They're beautiful creatures and they look like a large squirrel.
Yes.
But they have the temper of a honey badger. And if things aren't going well for them, they will let you know.
Wow.
So if you weren't familiar with that, if you weren't expecting that, yeah, it would have really scared you. Like it would have, it would have drained the blood from your face. I would have been hightailing it out of there. Now, what's happened, of course, over the years, this place has been torn down and that. And Look, it's easy for us, I think, certainly easy for me to go, look, there was just some possums in there.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. And of course, this area of Sydney now is built up and it's quite suburban. But I think if I was walking through the suburb of Barangibby now, dark of night, winter, I might just stick a little bit closer to the streetlights than I normally would. Because as much as the rational part of my brain says there's no such thing as ghosts, there's a bit of my brain that just won't let it go.
That was a brilliant story. I really enjoyed that story, even though you sort of killed at the end by saying it could have been possums. But did you enjoy it at home? So if you're listening to this and you're on the run or you're watching us on YouTube, did you enjoy it? Pop a little comment in. Did you enjoy it? Or did you prefer my Lancashire witches story?
Yeah, I feel like mine was a little spookier. Because I don't find witches spooky. I find ghosts scarier. I find the idea of ghosts a little harder to rationalise, where I can rationalise witchcraft because it's all about empowering, women looking for power.
I'll never forget, I just passed my driving test, and near where I live in Cheshire, this a hall, it's called Bramwell Hall. It was built in the Tudor period, and there've been all sorts of tales over the years of how they used to have priest holes. The Catholic priests used to hide in these holes, right? So me and my friend, it was about 2:00 in the morning, and we were driving home, and I said to her, let's go to Bramwell Hall. It's 2 minutes from where I live. I said, apparently you can hear a woman who lived in the hall who was supposedly murdered in her bed. I know. Apparently you can hear her screams, right? And you can also hear her singing Greensleeves. I won't sing it because I can't sing, but it's So anyway, so we get there, I turn the car off, and my car at the time, it was quite an old one, it had a choke. So I turned the car off, let the choke out, whatever, and we're sat there, and next minute, I am not joking, we heard 3 of the most almighty screams you have ever heard in your life. It was that bad, I couldn't, because I'd froze, get my key in, get the choke up, do all the things I needed to do to drive off. Honest to God, it was the scariest thing I've ever witnessed in my life. Now,
it sounds like the opening to a teen horror flick.
Obviously, it could have just been somebody getting murdered, and we
of course,
quickly fled the scene. But,
well, out where you live, it's not surprising.
Nothing ever came out that anyone was ever murdered in the park that night. But after that, I can honestly say, look, I wouldn't say I'm a believer, but I'd say I'm open.
So now it's time for Extra, read all about it. These are those fun, sort of quirky little bits that you and I pick up from the newspaper. So, Michala, what extra spooky bit have you got for us for this Halloween episode?
So, my extra for this week, Brad, it's from the Butte Miner, which is in Montana. The date is Sunday, the 3rd of December, 1916, and it's on page 4, and it's called the Rochester Knockings. And I'm just going to read you the first paragraph. In the early winter of 1848, the family of John D. Fox, consisting of himself, his wife, and 2 daughters, living in Hydeville in Ontario County, New York, was startled by nightly rappings on the floor of the bedroom of the youngest child.
And I'm guessing that's knocks, not the wrapping of presents.
No, or the rapping of music. It's definitely knocking. Now, the youngest daughter admits that she made the raps with her toe and admits of no doubt. Using the letters of the alphabet, a sort of communication was established. Ages of members of the family were asked and correctly given, and the announcement made that the rapper was the spirit of a murdered peddler.
So they mocked up some kind of Ouija board type
You've
thing.
got it, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
this is an early form of Ouija board, but coming through the daughter, the youngest daughter, who is basically tapping on the floor of, messages she's getting sent from a murdered peddler. I thought that was brilliant. That was my quirky story for today. The Rochester Knockings.
And this is why I love newspapers so much. There's so many stories in there that are just little bits, little chunks of history, little bits of our ancestors' lives. And sometimes it's great and you get really good information. And sometimes like that, it's just enough to get you interested.
Yes, and obviously, we've already mentioned we will put a link to these articles in the comments below. So if you guys out there want to do your own research into the Fox family and what happened to them, you are more than welcome to do that. And let us know what you find as well. We want to know. We'll talk about it on the next pod.
And by all means, take the opportunity to correct Michala's research.
Absolutely. Or correct the author of the article themselves. What's yours, Brad?
This is from the America's Times Recorder in Georgia. And it's dated Saturday, the 13th of December, 1913. And I'm going to need my glasses for this. It says, girl flees screaming into the street from ghosts in a church at Athens. Now, Athens in Georgia, not the one in Greece. Literally, thousands of people in the past 2 weeks have come downtown nights to see the ghost in the portico of the First Baptist Church of this city, which was discovered only 2 weeks ago, though it has been present just as visibly for 15 years or more. Never noticed before. So what was happening is the way a street light was interacting with the architecture created this vision of a person hiding within the church. But you had to see it from a particular angle and you had to kind of imagine it. But once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it.
Wow.
And so this woman had just picked up on this image, freaked out, and suddenly everybody could see it.
Wow.
And it's like when you look at a cloud, it's just a cloud until suddenly you see a face in the cloud. And that's all you can see. And I think it's a great way to end this Halloween special, because a lot of the things that we find spooky and scary are things that pull us together, things that unite us. One of the two things that really pull us together as humans is love and fear.
Well, that takes us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or for watching if you are watching us on YouTube. Please remember to follow, give us a like, give us a share. We would really appreciate that. So thank you. We also want to hear from you. So if you guys have been researching or you've got any spooky Halloween stories, don't forget to pop them in the comments too. We love a good newspaper story. So yeah, we can't wait to read those.
And if you want to reach out to any of us, you can get me at Brad_Argent.
And me at Dr. Michala Hulme.
Or you can reach newspapers at newspapers.com or Ancestry at Ancestry. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Behind the Headlines of History is a podcast from Ancestry and newspapers.com. All newspaper articles are sourced from newspapers.com with additional research on Ancestry and using other sources. We recorded here at the wonderful Outset Studios. Producer is the delightful Bryony Partridge. Executive production is World Class by Myron Angus and Victoria Welsh. And editing is superb, and it's done by Matt Birtwell.